Then in 2020, we did a waste sort with the statewide Department of Natural Resources. That showed us that a third, or 34% of overall and 38% of all residential waste, is all organic material. So we have yard waste is banned from being landfilled at a statewide scale, but food waste is not. Of that 34% overall material, the vast majority of that is both wasted or inedible food scrap. So, the parts that the rinds, the cobs that you don't actually eat. If we're trying to elongate the life of a landfill as we can, as the permitting process allows us, we really need to divert that material that's organic as the largest waste stream that we get.
Most of that waste comes from like the industrial scale of food production. And so we sort of have like this industrial scale of waste as well. Our relationship to the food we ate, to the soil on the ground, to the like birds that fly around us, like everything, we're all like one ecosystem. And like if humans are unhealthy, so is our relationship to everything else. And like the real root of all of that is the soil. Like if our soil is not healthy, the food we're eating isn't going to be healthy. The animals that live around us aren't going to be healthy. Like it has all of these like exponential effects on our community.
I eat this in my kitchen, I can throw it out in the trash that goes to the landfill, or I can compost it. If I compost it, what does that even mean?
It's like the active collaboration with nature, in a sense, Like composting is like feeding these micro trillions, Now I almost see like eating as a form of composting. Like you're feeding the microbes that then are like taking the ball, and it's not just like insert like square peg into like, it's a dynamic thing, depending on what you eat, different enzymes and different microbes will break it down and then send it to different microbes in the body that will then do different things. And it's like,
end of it, we really need to talk about what composting is. At the end of it, it's a finished product that is a soil amendment that is going to make the soil healthier.
It has organic matter, which is the nutrient bank of that plant, and then it actually has biology that can solubilize the nutrients so the plant can actually use them, right? There's a ton of phosphorus already in our soil. So if you put down better soil biology, it can be solubilized and the plant can actually take it up. So, those are really a lot of the benefits that we focus on with compost.
We've even had a huge debate of our food scrap stop program. When we were naming it, do we put compost in the name? No, because it's not compost that you're putting in the bin. That's what Jerod does. He makes the compost. We put the food scraps in the bin to become compost. So kind of doing that circular education of where does our food come from? Where does it go? How do we connect where it goes back to how we make the food?
UW-Madison has been working to divert food scraps from the landfill for a long time. Since about 2010, around that area time, food scraps were collected on campus on a smaller scale, sent to the West Madison Agriculture Research Station, where they were to be composted, and they tried that out for a number of years. As they expanded the program, they expanded it to so many different areas, and they had carts all over campus.
Okay, now originally, prior to 2018, we were taking food waste a smaller amount, but it was too contaminated with utensils and non-compostable.
I mean, there's stories of even like cutlery and knives and forks and stuff getting in there and popping tractor tires out in the West Madison Agriculture Research Station. So what the UW-Madison did was they pivoted to a new place that could accept materials, and that was an anaerobic digester. In an anaerobic digester, material is sent to it. So food scraps, organic material is put in there. And what they do is they extract the methane from it and use it as biogas. and then the remaining residuals are then composted from that process. So,
well before my time here. So 2011 is really when our effort sort of kicked off with our pilot program for collection. Really, like the research about like how to do the pilot and what other places have done started before 2011. But yeah, so in 2011 we had about 500 homes and a handful of restaurants that were part of this volunteer collection program. We called it an organics pickup at the time, where once a week we went around with the truck and we picked up these black bins at the curb. And we picked it up with what's called an automated collection vehicle. So just the robotic arm reached out, grabbed a bin, tipped it in the top of the truck, set it down, and then went off to the next stop.
in 2020, around that time, shortly after I started, the digester was sold to a new company. So there's a new operator. And in that operating agreement, they no longer wanted our material. So they no longer wanted UW-Madison's material, and they didn't want the City of Madison's organic material anymore, too. So we were kicked out, effectively.
That because the biogas that you make is worth more money if it doesn't have food mixed in, as opposed to just made from manure. So that kind of killed that avenue for us. So we needed to pivot again. So we were able to get a grant from the USDA, and that kind of led us to where we are now, where we have these food scrap drop-off points, and we're working with an urban farmer. At least it's citywide access. The people that would bring us stuff would be the most highly motivated people. So it's self-selecting at that point. So not ideal, but we still didn't have a place in 2019 to take the material that could deal with the contamination issue. So we still have to prioritize cleanliness over high volumes of stuff. So like, okay, we'll just do it at drop-off sites.
So then from there, we had to figure out, okay, what can we do for food scraps collection? So since then we developed the pilot program where we were collecting food scraps from 4 of the largest generating facilities on campus, and repartnered with the West Madison Agriculture Research Station, which is a part of CALS, and we've had a really good relationship since then. And now we are up to 5 locations, and we're essentially maxed out at these 5 locations for what our current staff capacity can handle, and what the Agriculture Research Station can also handle too and want to process.
Essentially, a year or so ago, the county was looking out to our future sustainability campus, assessing the viability of investing a few $1 million in making our own compost facility, or the viability of doing a partnership instead. So it became, with some grant potentials, with the funding that we were looking at into the future, it looked a lot more viable to, outfit a local partner with a few $1,000s instead of millions of dollars to make a yard waste site equipped to take food waste. And essentially we went out to bid. So through county processes, we released a request for proposals. Purple Cow and others submitted. And essentially what made Purple Cow stand out was their experience in this realm. They've been composting, I guess Jerod can get to that, for a long time, but have been very yard waste based. So we needed a role like mine, essentially, to get the food there. And then Purple Cow, along with their experience, their quality product, that having, a great marketing team and sales just supports their financial stability. So a huge issue with food scrap composting in the past has been, well, I guess not necessarily composting, but the city of Madison sent their food scraps to a digester in the past, and ones went out of business. There was contamination issues. So knowing we had a nice stable partner to work with in the future, that outlet would be there for us, and that they have additional sites, around the county, and some talks with us of, if we do really well at getting people on board in this program, that we have the potential to expand beyond the Meyer Road site that is just a few miles away from here.
It was my buddy Co who started this thing with me, and his grandmother was a community composter in Japan. Like, she started this whole group in her village, and so that kind of got me thinking of ooh, yeah, we should be doing that, definitely. I had also just moved into the Red Pine Co-op, and my gardening interests were still blossoming and burgeoning, and I had all the house chores and stuff, and I was like, oh, composting's a house chore, yeah, I'll take that on. And then pretty quick I was like, oh, okay, we're not actually making enough material here to get a hot pile going. So And then at that point, I had just started working at a Han as well with Chucky and Jamie, and I was doing prep cooking there. And I was just like, oh, wow, there's a lot of carrot skins and butts, and like, who's taking that? Where's it going? Like, what? Okay. And then I kind of saw like that. I think there's a job there that nobody's doing that I kind of want to be my job. So I'm just going to start doing it. And Rooted had just gotten like an NRDC grant for composting. But they weren't really actively composting. They just kind of had a mound out there of where their farm waste was. And so kind of just like, yeah, through the grapevine of like, oh, I've seen someone like going up and down the street with like two burleys strapped together. And like, I think he's composting. Like, oh. And yeah, and then we had different people from that kitchen kind of migrate around the city and kind of look at me and be like, hey, are we gonna start doing this over here now? And so yeah, now we're 2 years in. We got about 20 restaurants that we're working with in the Willie Street area.
Little slice of being able to put those materials here in the landfill. So we're driving up to the active filling portion. It's about 5 acres, right, Thomas? Yeah, about 5 acres of our total 105 acres.
Not all composters have the same types of systems. There's aerated static piles, there's in vessels, there's a million different ways. Well, maybe not a million, but there's a variety of unique tailoring that different places have. They have a shredder or a depackager, different equipment that supports different operations. And so it's just like recycling. The machines that do the work really determine what contamination can be removed and not.
There's a lot of different methodologies on how you can compost materials, all the way from, there's static piles, there's aeration, there's what we do is at West Madison Agricultural Research Station, we do windrow composting.
It's every type of food.
Okay.
There's even meat in it, because if you have different sauces or things of that sort, you have a pasta dish or that, so there's going to be meat in it. There's whole produce, which is harder to break down because you're having unprocessed oranges, pineapples, onions, things of that sort are in it.
So we're getting about 220 ton a year.
Okay.
And it may be a truck a day in these small volumes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes 2 trucks a day.
So that's like 2,500 pounds at least every day. The 5 days of the week. Mondays more because they don't come on Saturdays.
Yeah, it comes in a big blob that comes out of the truck. Ralph mixes it with the food waste, covers it so vermin doesn't get to it immediately because they're on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start trying to turn it and change it from its raw material into a field spreadable product that has structure and.
Right now I'm doing basically adding it to a wood product, either sawdust and wood chips or just a straight wood chip product is what I'm doing, because it's so high in nitrogen.
So maybe 2 to 1, 2 scoops of wood chips to 1 of the food waste, something like that, right?
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, volume wise.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to have to on Friday, but Rod did it. I would have stayed to put it in the row and bury it, simply because they're coming again. And the pit that we dump in can only take so much, so it cannot be left.
Got it.
You've got to remove it and then set it up again with a fresh bed of chips for them to dump on.
It's very labor intensive process.
Just that you have to
Everything
do it.
in
You have to
farming
be
is-
on top of it. You can't, I'll do it some other time. You can't. You have to be. To facilitate the breakdown, composting action, it's better with warmer temperatures. It's like making a cake. You can't do the batter for a cake and have it all ready to go, and then you put it in the pan and you put it in the oven for 5 minutes or whatever, and you go, I forgot to add the baking soda. Now you take it out and you kind of mix it in. Does that still make cake? no, it won't come out in a good tasting cake. So there, once you've started a volume of material do that decomposing, then that's its unit. Then you have to start a new one after that. You can't just keep adding every day to the mix because you're adding fresh to partially decomposed.
We did do food, like I said, when we first started, when we weren't on camera, before it was cool, so probably over 10 years ago. And we were making a good product and not having a contamination except with stickers. The issue is that it was very small. So it wasn't big enough that we wanted to invest in a bunch of money to grow it. And it was kind of too small to deal with operationally. And again, we were trying to do a lot of the things Delaney talked about, which was, go out and do outreach with stores and all those other things. And it's not our area of expertise. And it was taking a lot of resources. So we kind of ended that program. But typically what happens is we'll have a big pile of yard materials from residents or cities. They'll then, come in with our grinder. We'll grind it. We'll then put it in windrows, and then we'll start the turning process. So we have written SOPs for a lot of our stuff, including like troubleshooting stuff. But again, those SOPs are changing now that we're getting back into food, and it gets, a little dicier, right? You got to really, be much more on top of it. Where when it's just leaves and yard waste, a lot of our guys, including myself, have been doing that for 15 years. So, the main thing that we want to do is make sure that we kill all the pathogens. So maintain our temperatures, required turns to do that. So we basically take the ground material and mix that carbon with the food, and then it goes mesophilic, where we're trying to keep it like 110 to 120 for a while, maybe a little lower, but basically to get it so it's not round. Most of the food's easier to manage. It's mixed in with a carbon source. So to reduce odors, right now we're going very high on the carbon to the food. And then once we go through that, we're going to take it out and we'll put it through our normal process. When we start that turning process, it is really high in the beginning, and then it slowly goes down as temperatures decrease. Eventually it's put into a curing pile. I'm guessing that material will probably take like 3 months versus 4 to 6. And one of the things that we actually have a device that measures temperature and the oxygen in the pile. So we can actually put this instrument into a pile and see how much oxygen is in it. All of our products are also OMRI listed, which is the Organic Material Review Institute. So any product that we sell, you can go and put it on food, and it can be grown organically. It's a resource for organic farmers, and residents that are more knowledgeable know about it as well. Those are very stringent rules. And then our product actually gets tested very frequently because it is included in a variety of different soil mixes we make. So we make things like seed starter, transplant mix, potting mixes, things of that nature. And our compost is a key ingredient in all of those. Every single one of those, for example, has to go through pathogen testing, nutrient testing with OMRI, and they're all OMRI listed.
At the time of spreading, I'll grab a sample out of the spreader and have it analyzed for NP and K and sulfur, and nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and dry matter and carbon nitrogen ratios. Again, we're not certifying it in the food waste case, but we're not putting it on food crops either. Right. It's field crops in the fall, and so there's plenty of time for it, and we're mixing it in the soil, so it's no risk of getting it on potato that you're going to eat.
Right. Yeah. No produce, doesn't go on anything. It's human produce.
Mostly because we just don't track the temperatures to prove that it's been heated.
In the fall, if we put it on the land, we will manage it by incorporating it shallowly, and so it doesn't wash off. Sheet erosion doesn't take it off and get it in to a waterway or somewhere. So it's blended. And the location where it's at, the leachate is directed to grass areas, and then these do not then go anywhere into a drainage ditch or stream. It will go downhill, if we go up on the location, if they want to see that. There is leachate coming out of the rows, but it's contained basically in the grass areas and doesn't get to even a ditch that'll eventually get to any water source. close.
We have maybe 100 different fields, so we're trying to get the fields that need it, and getting it further spread to those so we can reduce our fertilizer bill.
Because basically a compost is a material that doesn't leach out like a commercial salt fertilizer. It's not
release.
all readily water dissolvable. So a compost material is a slow release nutrient in the soil, and it helps with the soil's makeup in compost, and for the bacteria and your other fungi and life in the soil that's needed to break down these elements to transfer to the plant through it. So you're basically feeding that livestock. Is worms and bacteria are your livestock, and we're feeding it.
So, because we have housing all around us, the smell can be offensive. It's worse than manure. The smell manure's been digested by cows.
Right.
Food waste hasn't. So it's got that.
And a higher nitrogen, the rotting food waste, especially your high nitrates, is going to cause more odor.
So that the wetness of it, the campus that brings it out learned that they have to rinse their truck out every time.
Okay. Wow.
And so in the winter, how do you get water up in the hill? So they had to mend their truck with either a tank with a sprayer that you can wash it out right there on site. They were washing it out by the buildings, and it just got to be stink.
Yeah.
It was just rinse water, but it built up. And
Totally.
You could see the grease layer, and it just stunk and unsightly. When general public is involved, if anything goes, what's in it, and so you lose all control. So we're trying to educate. That was the idea of this pilot study of, can we get a clean stream? And what's it take? I mean, we're coming from campus, which are these educated white entity, and there's still things that they don't understand.
Like it says in the name, you have a group that's out there that's trying to do agriculture research as their primary purpose, and they're happy to take food scraps and turn it into a soil amendment that is compost. But if it comes at the expense of having equipment go down and having to replace tires, that's very inefficient. That's very problematic. It's a nuisance. It's waste in itself. So we didn't want that happened in the past. And also the stream itself, other than those rogue items that caused really big issues, there's a lot of paper that was in there. There's a lot of items that once you put them out in the field, it would blow all over the place. So as they kept going through it, they ran into several different issues. Without having a clean stream of material, it is going to be very difficult to keep a relationship with any composter. They're not going to want your stuff. Any program that you talk to about composting, I would be shocked if they don't bring up the word contamination. I would be absolutely shocked, because that's the one thing that kind of disrupts and kills a lot of programs.
Our curbside program that began in 2011, it failed ultimately because we wound up just having too much contamination in the system. That's what wound up happening. We tried, the UW class kicked us out because we just couldn't get it clean enough. There was too much pet waste in there, batteries and coat hangers and stuff like that. It was winding up in these food scrap containers. And so we stopped there, we went to a different place, and then we kept getting the program a little bit bigger every time too, and trying to kind of get our handle on that contamination issue and trying to communicate to the people that had volunteered for the program. And then every place we went, we just kept running into that contamination problem. We just couldn't.
Contamination is the key to our food scrap compost program. If we get a lot of plastic, obviously the produce stickers, twist ties, rubber bands that come on all of the produce that you're gonna chop up and prep at home, that's not great. It's definitely contaminants in the system, but we even have larger issues of places that other folks are used to taking certified BPI compostables, but this plastic cups looks just like it. And so kind of getting around the consumer perception of what items can and can't be composted.
Like anything else, if you put that contamination, if someone needs to screen it out, and you need a method of screening it out. So the best way of doing it is never putting contaminants in the bin in the first place. That's the easiest way.
one of the points of confusion about food scraps is just like what's compostable and what's not. You think it'd be straightforward, but it's not, because there's the people research things online that get a lot of different information. There's not really good, I guess, how do you control what people, it makes it sound so like Big Brother to the word what I'm about ready to say, but like how do we help people understand what's true locally, and not necessarily, that's not necessarily going to be what they see when they start trying to seek out information in the great wide world of like information, which is going to be a lot of noise and who knows what they're seeing yet. We call it an organics program, and then we started calling like a food waste program for a little bit in the interim. And we saw so many like potato chip wrappers and butter wrappers and or potato chip bags and stuff like that. And I just don't know, is it because there were certain, did they think it was because it was waste from the food? Is that what it was? I don't know, and or is it just because there was just that much like they just were at the bin and they didn't care and they just threw it in there and they thought it was part of the food still. I don't know the whole like the math of it, and it's hard to get that information from the participants too, because even volunteers don't fill out surveys. It's hard. It's hard to extract this so we can then know what to say, so we can then make the program better. So we've been collecting food scraps at these farmers markets with people at booths, so people have to drop the scraps off, they can inspect what's there, they can have conversations with people to be certain like what's right, and then we take the stuff to the Roberts farm then to compost it. It's limiting though, because that's basically what you can compost in your backyard. So it's like eggshells, coffee grounds, raw fruits and vegetables. But it's kind of the best we can offer now because we still don't have that commercial operation. But that's what the county's trying to build with Purple Cow is a bigger facility that can operate at a bigger scale, that you can start like taking bread or cheeses and other stuff too that kind of that's going to get hotter, it's going to get bigger, hopefully be a little bit more forgiving about some stickers and stuff like that people will naturally like forget, so they won't take the little plastic thing off their sprig of cilantro or whatever, and just leave it on there when they throw it in the bin by mistake. And then
we're going to be at the Northside Farmers Market this summer, doing a drop off, doing a pickup. We're going to have like a bin there. People can dump their stuff in it. And then we'll bring it up here and add it to the pile on Tuesdays.
Expectations that they are working for the city and they're not. They're working for themselves, or expectation that we're all together. Then like if they start saying like bagels are fine or whatever it is, or cheese is going to be like, oh, it's okay, man. It's like, no, it's not, because it's not okay everywhere. And we got to make certain we're all kind of rowing together here, because like it's really easy for people to feel overwhelmed whenever we add more like doubt in this system that we have. Because
you can, exactly what you said of the first pilot versus the second one, that's what we've been working with, especially with our resident program, of what materials that we're saying that we can take at the outset versus down the road what we might be able to potentially take, is that you can always have room for expanding. No one's going to listen if you retract.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, starting slow, very intentionally, making sure that, if we start slow, but it's a long-term program, versus if we go all in right now, full tilt, give me anything you got, then that's a surefire way to get a lot of tonnage at the front end and then end your program.
Yeah. So when a load comes in, our guys are actually checking it in. So we see it right away if it has contaminants in it. And then from there, if it meets certain thresholds, that's when we reach out to Dane County and say, hey, we got an issue, right? But so far that hasn't happened. But as it scales, maybe it will. But the goal is to catch it before it starts going into process, because from there it can be removed off the facility without potentially contaminating more product later that then can't be sold. So, that's the key of what we're trying to focus on there.
By having the physical plant team document those, then we can call it out and say, this is what was found on this day. So if we have a photograph of what is found on that day, they can send it to whatever facility operation is. So let's say if it's Gordon, they can identify where they take a photograph of it. The team will know, where did that come from? Was that a dining operation? Was that a catering operation? So they'll be able to actually go one level back to say, where did that contamination come from? So then we can do corrective actions to make sure that the team of people don't put the wrong stuff in the wrong place.
Instead of just having the arm pick up and dump it in the curb, we'll the truck rather, will peek in every cart before we dump it. So like visually inspect everything to make certain it's clean before we put it in the truck. Because what's in the truck, then you can't get it out of the truck again. Like it's done, then you have the problem. And then communicate like weekly with everybody that volunteered. Like, here's what's going on, here's what we saw, everything's great. We gave everybody access to a free app as to what can go in the cart. Like, we did hit it as hard as we possibly could, and it worked. But it wasn't replicable for like do citywide that way, and so
landfills as are anaerobic, no oxygen. That's where a lot of methane is captured, and that's why we have those wellheads pumping them to our renewable natural gas facility. So while we want to divert all organic materials so they don't create methane and have that climate impact, we're essentially using it as a renewable resource and actually diverting gasoline usage and using renewable natural gas instead. It'll be active. This will still be producing landfill gas for at least, I think, 40 years. I'm not one of our landfill engineers. I'm the organics person. But for decades into the future, at this lovely landfill behind me was built in 1985. We do some natural gas processing here on site. And so that large project, that small $30 million project, essentially made us our own department. Ever since then, we operate this landfill, but we're looking to divert as much material from being treated as waste as possible.
Don't you just want us to put our stuff here because then you're capturing that methane? They still don't. They still would rather have us find a better, higher use method. This is just a solution. It's a better solution than just putting in a landfill that doesn't do any resource recovery. They do the resource recovery, which is good, but they still want to encourage us to find other alternative to sending food scraps. In Dane County, I can landfill a ton of material for around $54 a ton, maybe $56 a ton, right? So that's 2,000 pounds of material I can put in a landfill, and they're charging me just for the tipping fee is, let's say, $54 or $56. But why does throwing stuff in a landfill, why is it so inexpensive? Because if it's so inexpensive, then it almost tells me that you don't you're valuing waste as it's okay to waste. Whereas if it was much higher, you're telling me I should not waste material. And by doing that, then more circular economic models would be developed. What is the financial incentive for me or any group to provide food scraps that will turn into compost? In my opinion, I think it would be a lot easier if there was a rebate associated with that material, or if there was a penalty associated with doing the bad thing. So I think that's what we have to look at when we talk about the economics of composting, and we can only do so much, because if we do operations that cost us money, that's not sustainable. Sustainable is economic, social, and environmental. We need to have all three of those benefits to have a sustainable operation. Even with the current economic model, there's still a cost-saving opportunity. We just have to take on that initial investment to get a lot of those financial savings over time. But it's not this one silver bullet thing where it's you have a return on investment in 1 year. No, it doesn't work that quickly. It's not just us, it's the campus partners that we work with too. We want to make their jobs easier. We want to save labor hours. We want to make their jobs safer. We want them to be healthier, right? We want to do all these things that help the university, not just talking about zero waste, but there's so many other benefits that come from sustainable materials management. Other universities are doing this too. They align their research with the applied operations. So I think there'd be an opportunity here as if we have soil sciences or if we have other programming, why not merge those two together and do a campus like living learning laboratory? So we can set it up a lot of ways. We can get an operator to operate it, but we could actually have research and education going on in tandem with that activity. Projects that align with our university's mission are more likely to get funded and more likely to go forward. And as long as we have those researchers and folks that are in alignment with that and want to do that, then that's something to move forward with.
I have a deep belief in the Wisconsin idea, which is like the work that happens at the university should benefit the state and like the people residing in the state. And I think often I find the frustration of like how we profess those ideals and how we make that happen in reality. And so I'm always thinking about how do we use the university as an institution? There's so much knowledge, there's so much passion in this small space. And how do we get that to like seep into the community around us and even allow what's happening, right, with Brain Plate and with Greenbox and all these different actors, allow that to seep into the university as well so that we're learning from each other. Our system is really based on profit, but how do we create a system that's based on multiple values, including economic factors, but also like environmental, communal, like equity, all these different factors. And I think maybe in Madison, our best example of that is through compost, where you have all these individual actors who are doing this work at different scales for different reasons.
It's harder for us in the waste industry to make as compelling as an argument as police. You know? They have no, which is like understandable, right? Like public safety thing, especially for public needs and all that. Like that's going to make a lot of noise. You know, you have like that's a really core basic service. You know, but this is important stuff too. But like, if you have money to fund so many things, and these police and fire services are so expensive, and they're what do you do? You know, so. But now, since recycling services were able to be separated and kind of live outside of the operating budget fight that happens every single year, it gives us an opportunity to maybe do some stuff.
The general stat that is always thrown out is 40% of food that is produced in the United States goes to waste, right? It goes to a landfill. We've created the scale that isn't human scale. It's just like industrial level. And so individual like fluctuations in demand and like environmental factors and all these other things aren't taken into account. And so at any moment, something could change. And then all of this food that is produced becomes obsolete, or like, it can't fly off the shelves before it goes bad, so to speak.
I see too much waste, food waste. Mm-hmm. They produce too much for a day for what it's going to be consumed. Yeah. There's a lot of waste because
making too much.
Yeah. Yeah, they aren't thinking of so much pasta per person. They just make a large amount and keep tracking their customer flow.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff that does come in sometimes from businesses could have been eaten, right? Mm-hmm. That also goes to expiration dates and policies and everything else. So it's a big M. So, but it doesn't all have to be composted, and there's even better ways to do it than that if we can just stop putting so much into the can. And some of those community outreach things that we're doing, I think, will also help, because I believe the Madison Area Food Pantry will be having a bin, right? I go there frequently. I talk to students there that are in environmental studies, agriculture. they have bigger community events. That's where we can potentially talk about it, right? And you'll have people coming in on a smaller scale and a larger scale there, where you can really educate and get them to appreciate it as well. Because the cool thing about a bin being there is then when they're using our compost or our other products, seed starter to grow, you can connect all those dots, right? Yeah. And really get them to see, okay, well, yeah, I don't want to put that in there because that's going to be in the seed starter that they're using to grow the food for the people that need it.
So obviously there's other higher and better uses of scraps before it comes to us, from like prevention and mostly prevention and getting food to hungry people and things like that. Like a lot of the focus does get put on us to kind of handle the scraps part, but there should be more focus on like how do you get this usable food into the hands of hungry people or animals and that. And we should be at the end of the line, and we shouldn't be what people think of first. But we are.
We as a society built ourselves into a corner where compost wasn't the first solution. It was unfortunately one of the later ones. And so we have to tweak operations at large scales to make their products fit with us. Yeah. And so that's like work that we're putting in, but it takes time to get to that scale.
There's really no waste in nature. So it's like the concept of waste that's the creation. Like that's what we've created, is like that you throw something away and it just disappears. Because ultimately it's all cycling,
We just have to prioritize what we want to do with our money and resources. Mm-hmm. To capture and recycle. The earth is a contained unit. Mm-hmm. An easy to think of recycling is water. Mm-hmm. Every drop that comes down eventually either goes into a stream and into the oceans, or it percolates and eventually gets into a stream in the ocean. Mm-hmm. That's evaporated back up into the atmosphere and comes down. We're not getting water from any other source. Right. It is the same water that was created centuries ago, mm-hmm. Millennia, and that's a process that's in place, a long time. Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, unfortunately, all our products aren't made to be recycled. So until we get to that point as a society, need to have a safe way to dispose of that waste. And so having a landfill as a last resort there is needed still. It's always easier to have a one-stop shop trash bin where everything just goes in the same thing. It's hands off. You put it in a bag, hauler takes it away. And this is a way. This is where it goes. It goes to the landfill, where that's not what we want to do. And so we have to get back to the mentality of, we have to separate our things to be recycled properly. There's a huge dire need to have a sustainable outlet for all these materials. We have a waste economy right now. It's not sustainable into the future. Mm-hmm. We need to change behaviors, and we need to change them yesterday. And the world's behind the ball there. So the most we can do at the biggest scale, and this is the partner that we found that we can do it with. It's time to divert it. Yeah.
Part of the plan was to kind of be like this whole community building, and like we're trying to grow together with this, was like, how do we make this sort of community around this to have more of the sort of social buy-in? Like if your neighbors are doing it and you see that, you get interested, you might get talking. It doesn't seem like something you can't do or some weird foreign thing, or like, it's like, no, it's like, it's kind of a neat thing. If you see it, then you can see the results in your house whenever you start doing this. It's like, I am not making that much trash. This isn't that big of a deal. Like, I can do this. It's like, Dave's doing it. Dave, you know what I mean? Or whoever down the street is, and then it makes it feel so much more real and possible in that way. And like,
we have basically an open door on our Tuesday pile builds, just like everyone's invited to come and do as little or as much as you want. And we pump the tunes and get silly and have a good time. The people that are so into it, have this as like a channel to meet every week and like really dig in. And I want to help spread that opportunity for like the community to come together around that. Something that's like really building solidarity with each other, but then also, giving us the sense of being grounded in the time and place. Like, if we're going to take care of the earth, we're going to take care of each other. The earth will take care of us.
It is possible to get our hands around it a little bit better if there was one centralized place to go with it, or or at least a couple bigger players where it was seen more standardized in some way. That's where, like, none of us want any of us to fail. So, like, let's just be slow, let's be patient, let's be smart, let's do it right. Let's not mess this up, because the city's program failed rather spectacularly whenever we had to quit in 2018, and it cannot fail again. Like, that's where my head's at with this. We can't mess it up. If anything, I think all the fact that there's so many players in it helps, that there's so much interest in it. Like, there's clearly, like, desire to solve it, and I want to solve it too. And I just so we don't wind up with, like, a frayed rope at the end of this, that, like, we got to be able to stitch this together. We wind up with something solvable that we all have here, and, like, whatever that shape that is, I am on board with solving the problem. I'm not precious that it has to be any one particular solution.
I guess everyone who's interested in food scrap composting keeps asking me when we'll get curbside pickup. That's a goal that a lot of people have. I don't know that that's necessarily where we'll wind up. I've seen a lot of success from the drop-off programs around the country. Having everyone have a bin that's this small and having pickup through there versus having on every block, in every neighborhood. I think there's a way that we can make the system more efficient than necessarily just everyone having the easy option. Although obviously everyone wants the easiest option.
Every municipality has a hauler that's picking up your guys' trash, once a week. Little buckets, if you picture them now, you've seen the automated ones, right? Now picture them all getting out of their trucks, picking up a bucket, going to the back and throwing it in, right? That'll take a lot of time and a lot of money. So, but if, like she said, a community says, one a block, whatever, and they're all throwing it into one container that can still follow that same process, it seems more feasible. And it won't be perfect, but, it'll be a lot better.
Yeah, it's all about finding the capacities that match each other. We want to divert as much as possible, but we can't make that diversion super time and energy intensive. And at that point, what's your offset for emissions there too?
But they almost have to, start with a small bucket that they can see if their forks ended up in it. But they're just, I remember Madison did a pilot study, and there was just junk toys and all sorts of stuff that ended up in it. And it's like, out of sight, out of mind, get rid of it. But don't need to do it.
But it'd have to be neighborhood locations where you could leave this material at. That would be manned with employees to handle this. And then from those smaller locations, then you go to a larger location. It can be done.
There'd just be a bucket in front of everybody's house, and a truck comes and takes it away, and we technically compost everything. Like, would that be a better reality than it all going in the landfill? Yeah. But on, like, a spiritual valuation level and, like, the connection to the earth, to me, is, like, almost as if not more important than the physical act of composting. So that's why, I feel like the community composting scale is, like, hits the sweet spot. Because, like, when it's just you in the backyard, it's like, I'm just slopping around back here, and, you're not getting enough of it at once to really get the cooking going. But then when and on the other end of it is like, oh, well, you throw it in a bucket, it goes somewhere way away and goes in a plastic bag that you have to buy it back. Like, that's fine. But then, like, right in the middle, it's like, all right, we can come together. We can just bring what we have that we know needs to go back in the cycle. We can help share the load. We can goof off and have fun while we're doing it. And then we can look forward to growing things from it. And we can enjoy getting those benefits from the microbes who are happy to live their lives and make compost. We need education. We need people to feel empowered. need positive opportunities for people to like dig into, no pun intended. So like going, the way of mechanization and like centralization and like corporate, endeavors, like there's definitely improvements upon the current scenario, but I feel like we miss out on the real juicy, epic stuff, of realizing that we're all on this planet together. We're all in a collaborative event. And that, I feel like, informs so many different other aspects of humanity too, of like how we look at each other, how we have compassion and humility, see the sacredness in all life forms. It's just an opportunity to really allow people to be a part of that, connected to it. And I just feel like, the closer you can be to it, within your comfort level, there's just like the more benefits to be had from it. Now, if we want to see the change affect like the city and the country and the world at large, like we can't do it all. That's impossible, unless you go to large scale, all these things, and then you lose all the subtleties and the organicness of it. So yeah, that's a big part of our focus now, is like helping pass the torch along, take the fire, and help some other people put some bundles together. And
this strategy of like, it's called fractal growth, and so you have these like little models on an individual level that work well, like Elliott is a like model to base other models off of. And so if you can like provide the structure of that model to other communities, obviously other communities aren't going to have Elliott's, but they can like learn from that model and create their own version of it based on the assets they have. And so that's like the strategy of the future in my mind, of how we like rebuild these systems, because each system is going to have to be so personalized to what that area can produce or even like has available to them. And each one will be really unique and like have all of its own strengths and weaknesses, but we can like, if we can connect all those fractals together, then we'll have a really strong system.